Today on Solutions for Mental Wellness, we have Dr. Cathy Sparks. Dr. Sparks earned her Doctor of Education from Liberty University. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist, a licensed professional counselor, and she's a registered play therapist. And in each of those different professions, she's also a supervisor. And she was my very first supervisor in my graduate school program. So she helped me organize myself as a therapist so that my chaos doesn't interrupt what's going on in the room. And so thank you, Cathy, for coming on our podcast today.
I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. So one of the things I want to make sure we cover today is what is healthy child development? With all the information that we have at our fingertips through social media, through just the internet, we have a lot of misinformation out there on what is normal, what is healthy, what is not typical. And so I know in my practice, I see a lot of young people coming in, diagnosing themselves and telling me what their challenges are. And I do a lot of explaining of, no, what you're experiencing, this is normal. And so it might feel big, but this is normal. So let's start today by talking about what healthy child development is and what that looks like.
Well, the early years of a child's life are extremely important,
Yes.
Beginning from the time that they're born as an infant. Those early years are so important to brain development.
Yes.
And to their future as an adult. For the children, healthy development means that this would include children of all abilities, even those with special needs.
Yes.
And they need to grow up in an environment that is meeting their emotional needs, their educational needs, and their health needs. They need a home that is safe and that they know that they can feel safe. They need to spend time with family. They need to play. They need to sing. They need to be read to. They need caregivers that are talking to them. And they also need proper nutrition. They need exercise. And they also need healthy sleep. Sleep can be a huge factor in a child's success at school.
Yes.
If they're not sleeping well, then it's difficult for them to be successful at school.
Yeah. So let's talk about sleep for a minute. One of the things I noticed is that children are not getting 7 or 8 hours of sleep. And so do you know what typical for children up to about, let's say, the age of 12 need for sleep each night?
Children that age need between 8 to 10 hours of sleep. One of the problems that I see is that they don't have a set bedtime.
Yes.
And part of that is because they're on screen time.
Yeah.
They have computers or they have tablets in their bedroom. And so they're staying up until all hours of the night. Children in my therapy practice will come in and tell me, I didn't go to sleep until 3 in the morning.
Yes.
And then they have to get up the next morning for school. So they're really not getting the rest that they need to be successful.
Absolutely. And so if they're not getting the rest that they need, then there's a domino effect.
Yes.
So it affects other parts of their physical body, their emotional well-being. They don't feel like running and playing. They don't feel like eating then. And sometimes children can appear to be ADHD because of a lack of sleep. And so then there's this misdiagnosis that happens. And so can you speak a little bit about ADHD for a minute?
Yes, ADHD in the elementary age children is 9.8% of children have a diagnosis of ADHD.
Yeah.
That's 6 million children
Wow.
that have a diagnosis of ADHD. ADHD is it's an interesting disorder because it is both overdiagnosed and underdiagnosed.
Yes.
It's overdiagnosed by children who maybe are not getting enough sleep, and so they're acting out in class. And then teachers will point the parents in the direction of, you need to talk to your doctor. I think that this child has some of these symptoms. It's underdiagnosed because the inattentive type don't get into trouble at school.
Yes.
And often they're just seen as bad students,
Yeah.
when really their problem is that they have difficulty focusing.
Yeah.
So we see both things.
Yes.
When you walk into a classroom, it is typical now in a classroom of 20 to 25 children for 5 of them to have a diagnosis of ADHD and be on medication.
Yeah.
And that just points to the fact that many times it is overdiagnosed.
Yes. So how difficult is that for the teachers in the classroom if they have students, that many students in one class who might be diagnosed with ADHD?
I think it presents several problems. One is that the teachers really have not been trained in how to handle this. If it's a true diagnosis, the medication is going to help. And they should be able to see a difference. If it's not a true diagnosis and they're on medication, it could actually do more harm than good. But teachers don't necessarily have classes of how to work with a child who might have these special needs.
Yeah. Yes. And so what are some interventions or some things that teachers can do in the classroom to help all of their students, but especially students who might have difficulty sitting still in their chair while they're supposed to be doing their morning work?
There's an old book that I have on my shelf called Mommy, I Can't Sit Still.
Yes.
And it really points to the fact that some of these kids really struggle with that. So there are things that teachers can do. They can allow them to have fidget toys in their desk that allow them to be doing something with their hands. Many people don't know this, but kids who are allowed to chew gum during a test, it really helps them to be more successful on the test if they have ADHD. What a teacher can do in that case is pass it out to every student during the test and then pass the trash can around when the test is over. And that way they're not breaking the rule of no gum in the classroom.
Yes.
But that really helps those students, just the chewing gum that can make a difference for them.
And I like, I sorry to interrupt, but I like the fact that it's all inclusive.
Right.
That you're not singling out a child, because if that one child was singled out, oh, they got to chew gum, then that creates a different dynamic in peer relationships.
Right.
And so that's not helpful at all either.
Right.
So I love the fact that you highlighted that the teacher can recognize that and create safety for all the students.
For the inattentive type, those children may be staring out the window. They may be looking at things around the classroom. Teachers usually in elementary school are required to have their room decorated. And for many children that have the inattentive type, that's very distracting for them. They can be visually distracted. They can be auditorily distracted. And so the teachers need to figure out ways that that child can get past those distractions. Sometimes just walking up to a child and putting your hand on their shoulder brings their attention back. And you can also do that so that the other kids don't realize I'm focusing on this child and a problem they have.
Yes.
It's just that you're being caring to that child.
Absolutely. I have seen many great educators. And when I was a student at North Greenville University, the program I was at there required that we take, the psychology majors, take some education courses. And one of the professors that I had, she was a retired school teacher who was teaching on the collegiate level. Because, once you're a teacher, you're always a teacher. And she shared a lot of the tips and tricks she did. And so much of it was unknown. But what stands out to me is she really knew her students and she cared for them. And that was something that was so remarkable because she cared for her students. Then she cared about their learning style. And she said once she got herself organized, it really didn't take a lot to maintain. And she was either going to chase chaos or she was going to keep things orderly. And she was, based on what she shared with us, she was able to keep things orderly. And that was really impressive for me. And I have used many of the things that she had taught in therapy. She wasn't a therapist. She never claimed to be. She was an educator. But many of the things that she did was helpful. Her training did start in special ed. So she did start out as a special ed teacher that went into a typical classroom. And so I also think that because she had that special ed training, that was another reason why her classroom style of teaching was so successful. And so how can therapists and teachers, and I know you're at Middle Tiger Community Center, and so you work a lot with educators, I would assume. And so how can we work together, collaborate together to be supportive to one another and to the students, those who learn typically and those who don't learn typically?
I think that it's important that we establish those relationships. I was in a meeting yesterday with the teachers, with the parents, and with the special education services to try to figure out ways to help this child who I'm serving in play therapy. I think that meetings like that can be very helpful. I was so pleased that one of the teachers turned to me and said, "Is there a way that you could help us to know some things to do to help this child who's really struggling right now?" He's in 4K. And so I think establishing those relationships, of course, you know very well that we have to have release of information to be able to talk to the teachers. But many times the parents are very willing to do that. And I always let the children know, I'm not going to talk to your teacher unless you know that I'm going to do that.
That's so important.
I'm promising them the same confidentiality that I would promise an adult. So I really think that those relationships can be really important. Because Middle Tiger is a part of the school district, I'm allowed to actually go into the classrooms and observe. So I can see what's happening before the misbehavior or the issue, and then I can see what the consequence of that might be. And that helps me to know how to help the child as well as helping the teacher.
Absolutely. I think that is a wonderful opportunity that you have there. You spoke to the piece about confidentiality, and children do need to trust us. Let's turn our attention now to this idea of trust. And I'm going to tie it back to emotional and mental well-being. Why is it so important for children to trust the adults or the authority in their lives?
If they don't trust the adult or the authorities in their life, they're not going to talk. There's another wonderful book that I have on my shelf called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. Many times the children will tell me that their teacher doesn't listen to them or that their parent doesn't listen to them. So when they are with me in the playroom, they have my total undivided attention. I'm looking at them. We're making eye contact. I'm responding to everything that they say and that they do. I'm reflecting their feelings so that we're establishing a therapeutic relationship, and they know that I understand. I had a little girl who turned to me one time in a session, and she said, "Miss Cathy, I wish my mommy would listen to me the way you do." And then I had a teenager who said, "Would you bring my mom in and teach her how to listen?"
Yes.
So children many times feel like they're not being heard, and that's a problem.
Yes. Yes. One of the things that I see a lot of in the therapy room is children telling me that their parents calling them liars and saying that they are lying to them. And then when I have conversations with parents about it, then the parents say, yeah, right there in front of the kids, yeah, they're liars. They don't know how to tell the truth. And one of the things that I've really had to work on doing is carefully and respectfully letting the parents know your child doesn't have a lying problem. Your child has a trust problem. The data shows that children below the age of 12 who chronically do not tell the truth do it because the person they're speaking with, they do not trust. And so one of the things we have to do is really look for ways to build or rebuild trust between the parent and the child. And it starts by helping the parent know that when they call their child a liar, then that is name calling and that's not healthy. But many times that's how the parent was parented.
Yes.
And so we have to go back and explore that. And so when it comes to trust is really fragile with children. Now, they are easy to forgive, but if they have trust broken time after time after time, then they will generalize that out to most adults in their lives. And so can you give us a few ideas of what we can do as parents or educators to help rebuild trust with the authority or with the adults in children's lives?
Once trust is broken, it's very hard to rebuild.
Yes.
It takes time. And so the parent and the child are going to need to work together for that.
Yes.
So it's important, I find, when I'm meeting with parents, to teach them not to set their child up to lie.
Yes.
Because they often do that.
Yes.
They will say, "Did you do this?" And that just sets the child up to tell a lie. Children often lie to get out of trouble.
Yes.
And so they're setting that child up. So I teach the parents a more appropriate thing to ask the child so that they're not setting the child up to lie to them. There are books that I use with children that are very specific about why we don't lie. A favorite one is The Berenstain Bears Tell the Truth, and that lets them know that sometimes if you tell a lie, it's hard to remember what you told, and it just keeps building and building and building. And that's working with very young children to help them to learn that. But I find as a child therapist that I have to work not only with the child, but also with the parents to help them learn. Also really try to help the parents learn that name calling is one of the worst things that you can do, because if you're saying to that child, you're a liar, then that child takes that upon themselves and they continue to do that. The same thing would be true in saying to a child, and I've had this happen to very young children, you're going to end up in jail one day.
Yes.
And that's self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you look at prison studies, many of the prisoners say that they were told as a very young person, you're going to end up in jail one day.
Yes.
So they need to stay away from name-calling.
Yes. That actually came to life for me when I was at not Heritage, but Westgate, and we did the program with Spartanburg County Jails. And we were providing therapy services for inmates who were there. And I had this one young man come in and tell me his story. And one of the tools that I use is the genogram, which is just a family map so that we can see our family and see where we belong in our family. And when we were doing his, he had 5 family members in jail with him. And I said, well, do you get to see one another and spend time? And he said no, that they really, the way the jail was organized is family members would not be together. They would be in different pods. And so that was part of the process too. But there was 5 family members in jail at the same time. And that was for their family, that was their normal.
Right. And kids are often told you're going to end up just like your father or just like your uncle. And then they follow those same patterns.
Absolutely. And so the words we speak to our children and over our children matter.
Most definitely.
Yeah. And so when we think about the most vulnerable children, when I say that, what are some thoughts you have about who our most vulnerable children are?
Well, a couple of things come to mind. One is poverty.
Yes.
Because with poverty, children are often living in unsafe places, and they don't feel safe or they don't have stability.
Yes.
Often, and a part of that is fatherlessness.
Yes.
Because when children do not have that father figure in their life, it's absent fathers, and the children are certainly affected by that. I have some statistics about that. But single mothers are often living in poverty.
Yes.
And so both of those factors come into play there. For children that are living in poverty, poverty is the number one indicator of school failure. That can be for many reasons. They may not have the supplies that they need. They may be growing up in homes that don't have toys or books that they can have to do with their parents. The parent may have to work so much that the children are sometimes left home alone. They have no one to help them with their homework. And so this can certainly affect that child. Boys that grow up without a father in their life are usually more likely to use drugs and alcohol. They are more likely to drop out of school, and they're more likely to have emotional problems. Girls who grow up in a fatherless home are more likely to have a teen pregnancy. The children feel a sense of abandonment.
Yes.
Why doesn't my father want to be around me? Why doesn't my father come to see me?
Yes.
They will often say, my dad said he was coming, but he didn't show up. And so this leads to major problems for these children emotionally. There are 24.7 million absent fathers.
Wow.
That's a huge number.
That is.
The highest number is among African Americans. The second highest is Hispanic. And so those statistics come from the National Fatherhood Initiative that is working to try to help in this problem.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what children need from their parents or from teachers or from other people, other authorities in their lives regarding lying?
Well, I mentioned that parents or teachers often set a child up to lie by the way they ask the question. Did you do this? Rather than doing that, a better way to ask it would be to say, I noticed that this happened. I'm wondering what you were thinking or feeling when you did that. Mm-hmm. And that way you're saying to that child, I know that you did it. And so you're not setting them up to lie. It gives them the opportunity to say, well, I was really angry because they took my toy, and so I hit them. And so they're not being set up to lie. And that's an example from last week with a child that I had who had gotten in trouble at school, had hit someone in the classroom, but then with me, when I asked the question that way, she was able to tell me what was going on and actually give me why she did this. We need to stay away from the why question because why makes children defensive, like they have to defend the reason that they did things. Yeah. And so we don't want to start our question with why.
Okay. So it sounds like that a couple things are needed. The parent needs to really inquire more about what's going on with the child. And when they do that, then they're communicating to the child they matter. And it sounds like it's opening up space for the child to feel safe so that they can connect their behavior with what they might be feeling. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes. And it's so important also that the parent or the teacher reflects those feelings, that they say to them, you must have been really angry when that happened, or that must have made you very sad, or you were very frustrated. Yes. If they will put feeling words to that conversation, the child then learns to be able to express their feelings through words rather than through hitting or acting out.
Yes. As a parent, it takes a lot to be able to do that. And I know a hot topic right now is co-regulation. And so co-regulation is one of those words that I think is describing something that we've been doing in the therapy room for a while, which is what you were just encouraging parents to do, is to, take a step back and really think about calming themselves down and being present in the moment and then helping their child have a conversation. And then by having that conversation, it sounds like there's an integration taking place, that integration between behavior and emotion. And so what happens when children are able to integrate what they do and how they feel? What are some benefits of that for children?
I think that the biggest benefit is that they are able to express in words rather than expressing in throwing something or hitting someone or laying down in the floor and having the tantrum. Yes. Or for teenagers, even stomping out of the house. They're able to have a conversation and to use those feeling words to express what's going on inside. In our next segment, we can talk about some parenting styles and how the different parenting styles can help in talking to our kids. There are typically 3 parenting styles. The first one is called authoritarian. The best way to describe this is the drill sergeant parent. It's my way or the highway. These are my rules. You have to follow them or get out. They usually use very harsh discipline, and they are not willing to listen, so the child can have no opinion about things. They have to just follow what that authoritarian parent says. Usually, as these children get older, what happens is that they begin to rebel because they don't feel respected.